mother's group. You can kind of leave it to yourself to imagine how the community regionally and locally would use that site. It would certainly be very family friendly. We have a similar facility in one of our parks at Lynn Headwaters. Not totally similar, but it's very affordable. I think the rent leases for $17 an hour or something like that. So there's a whole lot of opportunities to use the site in an active or passive way. Another part of the site, this is a very open site. We heard from the public. This is an open site as part of our Snug Cove, and it's quite open. It's quite designed. Towards the creek, there's a small nature trail proposed around Cottage, where Cottage 17 was, and that would be an opportunity for the stewardship groups and local, Boy Scouts, other groups that have a hand in actually shaping this site. So there's a few ways that families will have an opportunity to engage.
I was wondering if you've given any consideration to for the nature discovery area about how you can attract people to be, or the young people to be playing there during some of our wetter months.
Yeah.
Right now, I tend to use Crookham Park, the parks here, much more in the summer, but when it starts to rain, it becomes a little bit more challenging to want your kids, to get your kids outside and play for more than 10 minutes. So I was just wondering if you thought about how you can attract that, people to use it year round, sort of covered play space or covered sandwich, something like that would say, hey, let's head down to the orchard this rainy afternoon. Or I like the idea, some of the idea that Councillor Bassett, that sort of heritage play, I like that. The other thing I wanted to say, I loved your idea about the climbing tree. There's a tree over in Tunstall Bay that many kids yammer to go to. That's why a lot of kids go to Tunstall Bay. Their parents perhaps would get a little bit bored of it, but there's a great climbing tree there. So I have to say, I really actually thought that was a really clever idea, bringing the orchard, and I thought that was neat. I really have to say, my comments is I am very much in favor of concept 2, but I will say I've been approached by a lot of people who feel quite sad that there'll be a loss of some of the heritage cottages. So, I think in a perfect world there could be more cottages spared, and that would be probably the community's wish. I understand there's budget constraints and everything on that one, but that's just something I really wanted to feed back. I think there's been some comments about loud voices, quiet voices, whatever, but I think I've been approached by all sorts of people sort of saying, if only. So for that, I'm going to have to really sort of say I really do support concept 2, the heritage focus, and if there's any way of saving more heritage, then I'd be also in favor of that. I think my focus, when I was sort of saying about that sort of being able to use the heritage, I don't know if there's a way of using like a living museum cottage, sort of in that, the kids can interact with. And I think that's probably all my comments at the moment.
I just wanted to add that I was really focusing on heritage option 2 as well. If I didn't actually say that, that's my preference.
Yes, Michael.
I had a chance to review all your background material for both of the concepts. And I have to say, regardless whatever the opinions may be, I think we should record for the record that the whole methodology behind the background was incredibly thorough. And it was laid out, and it was easy to read, and it was easy to understand why you came to concept 1 and concept 2. And it was obviously sufficiently thorough for you to be able to put a budget price to it. And to get to a budget price, it means that you've done a significant amount of work, because you don't just snatch figures out of the air, and therefore your thinking was at a fairly mature stage. There's always that lovely expression, and I think it was always a laugh. It says, subject to regular budgeting process. Now, if I may just ask, let's assume that we can start at a certain date. Given the amounts of money that you're anticipating, would you say this is a 1, 2, or a 3-year project? How would you envisage this being phased? Or, because I kind of gleaned through the small print that it was probably unlikely that you'd be able to take all the monies required in one fiscal year. Maybe you could, but perhaps you could let us all know a little bit more on the timing.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that question. So the term "subject to regular budgeting process" is honoring the board's decision-making authority to fund, approve the yearly budget and fund projects as they see fit. How we move through projects, we go through a planning process, and then we put them forward for funding for the board's approval as part of the yearly budget. It would likely be a 2-year project. And part of that is not just budgetary, but the ability to take the time to do further design work, as you know, do the detailed design work, build things and make improvements at the right time of year, and go through all the steps you need to get a project right. So it would likely be 2. Could it stretch into a 3rd year? Perhaps. These things tend to flow out over several years.
No, I think that was the indication I was looking for.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Just on the public use cottages, would they have to have ramps so they would be handicapped accessible and handicapped washrooms?
Yeah, thank you for that question. When we're making improvements, accessibility is a key target for us, so we would aim to have it fully accessible.
And I don't know if it was actually in the presentation, but the total cost of option 1 is?
The current cost estimates are in the range of $850,000 for concept option 1. Concept option 2 is, I believe, 1.3. Those are order of magnitude cost estimates.
Yeah.
So as we move through detailed design, those are the refined.
I just wanted to, the difference in the range. And in my notes here, looking at cottage 18, which is short-term rental now, right?
Yeah.
How much revenue have you anticipated the short-term rentals or the bookable facilities might throw into covering off operating costs going forward?
They don't significantly, it's a public facility. The revenue from a public bookable facility is negligible. It's all helpful, it'll all circle back into the system for regional parks. The current revenue from the bookable cottages is in the realm of $6,000 a year per cottage.
That's in the other parks.
No, two of these are currently available for short-term rental.
Oh, short-term rental, I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
thinking my bookable facility, the one
Yeah.
for community uses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would likely be several $1,000s a year that would go towards some of these.
So there's 2 existing short-term rentals there now, and they're proposed to stay in option 4.
In option 2, both would be short-term rentals. In option 1 would be a short-term rental, and 1 would be a public bookable facility.
And how much revenue do you get from public bookable facilities in the other parks for small places like that?
It varies. As I said, that we have a small museum cottage type building that rents for about $17 an hour. So you know, typically they're used in the evenings and not frequently, so it would likely be in the range of, you know, a few $1,000s a year, probably.
Yeah. Long time to recover the cost of that.
Yeah.
Why did you decide not to leave the 2 short-term rentals and make one a bookable facility? Is that from the feedback you got?
The idea of including short-term rentals, it is an option of how we can use.
Well, you've got 2 short-term rentals there now.
Yep.
And in option 1, one of them's going to become what I will call a bookable community use facility.
Yeah.
So why did you decide not to keep it as a short-term rental?
Well, that was in response to the public feedback. Like, as I said, a number of people certainly heard, we'd like to have access to these cottages, we'd like to use them, so the public bookable facility is that opportunity for people to use these cottages as they see fit and have access to them. I should also note that the plan represents a snapshot in time. So concept 1 proposes the permanent upgrade and maintenance of the 4 cottages. Concept option 2 is 6 cottages. It doesn't preclude that changing going forward if there was not a lot of desire for short-term rental, but there is extensive desire for public bookable facilities. In 5 or 10 years, we can monitor that and make that shift is an option. So,
And did you give any consideration for a hybrid between 1 and 2, where you kept the 4 that are in 1 and built replicas for a couple more? It looks like you could build 2 replicas for a lot less money than refabbing them, and somebody might want to use them because they're new and they don't smell.
Thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, I just, I would say, like Michael, I did go through the entire Davies Orchard report, and there's been a lot of work done. It's been extraordinarily thorough on these buildings, and there's no question that there has to be some work done there. I mean, it's an absolute eyesore, and bringing it back to its former glory in any shape that we can is certainly a step forward. There's no question about that. What, as far as the, probably, you know, the bookable public facility and the short-term rentals, how are they managed? Will they be managed internally? Okay,
Yeah, so thank you for that question. We've got a number of bookable facilities across the system. And currently just updating how those are accessible to a newer system, but you can book them over the phone or online. We have a booking staff who work with our park operations staff to liaise and make sure the facility's ready when folks are interested in booking it.
yeah.
So we have that structure.
Yeah, I just wondered about the sort of ongoing, not so much maintenance as just housekeeping and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Would that be done by parks, or would it be done by contract?
Typically it's done by regional park
Yeah,
staff.
okay, yeah. Washrooms, do you have any washrooms in the plans for the actual location?
There would be-
Besides what's in the buildings, public washrooms, I think.
Yeah, it's a good question. There are pit toilets just
there,
adjacent to the site.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and there would be basic toilets included in the
Yes.
upgraded cottages.
yeah.
There currently isn't additional public washrooms in the site.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And parking, well, you're not gonna provide a whole bunch of parking in there. I like the idea of the back lane behind one block back from Trunk Road there. I like the idea of opening that up, because I think in the future, I think there's absolutely no question that that's gonna be a very large transportation corridor and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Both pedestrian and maybe bikes and stuff, but, so how do you envision the parking in there, if there's any?
There's kind of, if you, I'm sure you're familiar with the city, there's kind of ad
Yeah, I
hoc.
see those ones, yeah.
Ad hoc parking now
Yeah,
on road,
yeah.
that kind of thing. And the idea is to push the parking to the edges.
Yes, absolutely.
As I mentioned before, so you can see it kind of tucked along the back there, or tucked along the top near the
Baseball field.
diamond. So
Yeah,
I believe we would have there would probably be less space dedicated for cars, but more efficient parking in this proposal, because it'd actually
Absolutely.
be
Perfect.
organized. Yeah.
yeah.
On that parking element, is there any chance of being able to leverage the parking that's already at the top of Bowfest Field? Because that parking lot is empty a lot of the time, so being able to sort of also suggest that
Yeah.
visitors could park there, so that you're not creating more
Absolutely.
parking just to deal with what the needs are for you when you already have some that's a little bit further away.
Absolutely. There's a limit to the amount of parking the site can accommodate and still be a pedestrian site. So to your point, we would try to encourage folks to use the other areas when this is full.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well, yeah, I'm in favor of option 2.
I just wanted to mention something that you may not know from back in the early days. There's quite a demand for school programs in May and June. And school classes from across the region are looking for field trip opportunities at that time of year. And I think this might be where your bookable facilities would be really useful. Typically, having done a whole bunch of them when I was with regional parks, and then the odd one receiving the phone calls, I guess, after that. What teachers generally want is somewhere where they can drop the backpacks and and go on one kind of excursion for the morning or whatever is remaining of the day after all the travel. Then come back, eat lunches in some kind of sheltered place with washrooms or some kind of toilet facilities, and then do something else in the afternoon. So in the past, for Crippen Park, for school programs, it's tended to be a nature hike to the lake kind of thing, and then either the seashore in the lagoon in the afternoon, because you find all the sea creatures and things like that. Or on the, in the early days, I'm not sure about recently, but something about the heritage and the Davies Orchard or something else. And it could be along that beach that's now beautiful and becoming more and more used by regional park visitors. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. The one that's just off the picture, but it's in Snug Cove there across from the marina. That whole part of the foreshore has changed over the years. So now it's a broad kind of gravelly beach with some soft patches. Whereas 25 years ago, it was just a rocky wooded shore, and you can tell from that big dead fir tree that's sitting right down there on the foreshore, that used to be well behind the water line, right? So with the marina and the dredging and things have changed down there. And just a note too, it'll keep changing because of sea level rise and whatever other changes. We're seeing that on the other side of the island at one of our own public beaches, also climbing the shoreline. I wanted to mention that about school programs because I don't know if you have if your stats go back that far, and if you're aware of that demand that has been slowly tapering off. I mean, we still get the odd phone call at our house. They track us down somehow. And but I think that could be busy. And the idea of the tent that Councillor Mason brought up, or some kind of shelter from rain, this could be a, if for example you had the frame of a cottage and stretch some canvas or put a roof on that frame, so you have some kind of a ghost cottage there that would protect from the rain, and still have a little sense of heritage and keep some of the roof lines, some of the massing kind of ideas, but still have the open space. And I just wanted to mention our heritage cherry tree that's down there on the corner at the old general store. That's one that generations of Bowen children have grown up in, climbing up into, eating the cherries, and I would just like to see some future like that of an orchard filled with children and children from all across the region through school programs or families coming. And I wish you all well with option number 2.
Thank you for that.
Anyone else? Okay.
Just a few questions. First of all, you've got, so option 1, you have the parking down behind Government Road, which I quite like. Option 2, you put the parking up just down the first baseline on the baseball field, behind the dugout.
Foul ball
Now,
line.
this is where the kids get all the foul balls. You know, they stand out there and catch them. That would be right in the middle of the parking lot. So I would suggest that your option 1, if it is interchangeable at all, it would probably make sense to put the parking, even for option 2, down at the northeast corner of the site. So if I don't know what the logic is behind the placement of everything in the 2 things, but if they're at all interchangeable, I think that would be a really good idea. As far as Cottage 17, Sue Ellen mentioned the idea of keeping that as a facade to partially keep 18, is it the one beside it? Because that really is a divorced area now. The way that this is done, that's just been dumped off in you know what I mean? It's really outside of the usable space. The Cottage 17, let's say if the removal of it was at the end of the process rather than the beginning, I would possibly allow some time to look at the possibility again of keeping it just as a facade, or if resources became available for heritage restoration or something over a period of the next 2 or 3 years, I think it would go a long way to making of the heritage conscious people on the island and throughout the region a little happier with the proposal. I did notice in your background documents that there was the heritage people from Vancouver and the regional heritage people that were strongly in favor of retaining as much as possible. So I don't, you know, it's not, that's not meant to be a deal breaker type of statement, but it would be really nice if that could be massaged in there somehow without necessarily keeping it as $160,000 full restoration. It has to be a rentable, usable space. And yeah, the only other point was I think that in the fullness of time, those cottages can get an awful lot of public use. To get $6,000 a year at $17 an hour, you only have to lease a cottage for 7 hours a week for it to break even with what it is as a short-term rental. So I think the amount of life that can be brought to that area with more and more emphasis on the short-term, on the day-to-day rental, particularly this idea of kids' birthday parties and all that sort of stuff, I think that would add an awful lot to it. So those are the only notes that I have on it. Is there anything there that I wanted you to address? Just take it with you.
No, Mr. Mayor, you, but we took lots of notes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add both options, they don't detract from the ball field, and the ball field is a very important part of Bowen's lifestyle and several of our families around this table. But the parking, as the mayor said, is fall ball line. So there's some bleachers there now, but you duck a lot when the balls come over. So people are not going to be wanting their roof dented or their windshield, so that really is the wrong spot. And that's the only thing that would impact on the enjoyment of the ball field, because that also is the bleacher section where it's sunny. So, you know, so, and then as to Cottage 18, it's the rental facility. And I think if somebody's coming to rent, they're probably quite happy not to have a lot of members of the public wandering all over and around them, so. But you've made it less desirable with all the trees in front. Right now, I think there's a bit maybe, even though it's low set, there might be a bit of a view out, but the way you filled it all in, so, you know, just keeping it as something that would be desirable that somebody would want to rent. Which then gives you revenue for covering operating costs. And I'm in favor of option one.
Okay. Thank you. So, any closing words?
No, I don't believe so. Thanks for, I want to thank council for all that feedback and for having us today. That's great. Is there anything else?
I just want to say thank you. Really, thanks for coming and thanks for doing this for us. We do appreciate it. We appreciate your consultation with this and the amount of consultation that you've done. I think you've really lived up to it quite well.
Will we be voting on the resolution?
I don't think we need to. Those were just put as guidelines. I think there's been enough individual feedback that we don't need to.
Option two.
Yes.
That's what you proposed?
Yes.
On the record.
Yes.
There's significant, significant support for the option 2 over option 1. And large, not just for the heritage conservation, but also because it'd be really nice to have those small bookable spaces. I think they would be just great, you know, everything from Rotary Club on through the Scouts and so on. It's the sort of facilities that people are always looking for on this island when their groups want to get together. And we have a lot of times when there's you know, where can we meet on the island? So please, keep them tuned in mind. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Got to do the motion to move to closed meeting.
Close some of the club.
I'm going to get the rest of my stuff.
What the alternative
Do you need some help, Alice?
No, I don't have that much.
Which goes on.
I'm just too stiff.
Stand up, yeah.
And run all parking in there, and things like that. Dedicated to all that. So that really is potential possession and center with the aisle. So if these are there is that walkway that goes up and down. There have been thoughts about, oh, well,
I'm sure I will, okay, you know, like, I don't want to come back and show
so that this is really, because you got walking up from the lower, oh, I didn't know that, I didn't know that.
Yes, well, you need your comments, yes, we always do. Nice to meet you, yes. It's tough, thanks for coming, listening to us, yes.
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for making the trip. Yes, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to give input. I wasn't sure. Yeah, I hope we get a chance to pitch in, but, you know, if you.
Want more input?
No, it's really valuable. Just a quick conversation.
I know, I haven't seen you in a
I
while.
know,
So we're
it's the first baseline?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
This is what you saw the last.
It was mostly just for that. It's very, very true.
I'm not sure.
No change at all.
This is the exact same, almost the identical. I mean, at this point, I'm showing you on stuff. As you're
As if you're going to.
Such an adventure. I know, it'll be fun. And you can just watch us on the top. I know,
but it's also a mood thing in the room. It's something everybody can agree on.
Yeah. No, and actually, it was really good because it sounds like there's strong consensus that summarized the option two.
Thanks very much. Thanks for the input.
Whatever I show.
Yes. Take care. Bye. And then there were three. I know, on the road. Well, I was just saying, I only want one more official. So we need a resolution to move to a close, so you can't keep that on.
Yeah, right. So, or.
We don't need to, it's fine.